Hey guys, welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are actually taking a look at a PS1 inspired indie development title by the name of Code Dino H. This game has actually been in development for the last while and it's heavily inspired by Dino Crisis and even the likes of Resident Evil, and it's created by fans of those type of old school games, as it uses fixed camera angles and it uses like survival horror elements that you would be well known and familiar with the likes of the games I just mentioned, and all for good reason, because the demo itself, haven't actually played it. It is quite short, but what it does offer is in abundance because it's actually really good. It actually works really well with the likes of a USB controller that I actually have attached to my computer, and it plays very similar to the likes of the old school games that I grew up and I know and love, and I still go and revisit them today, because I have mentioned it before on a lot of my other videos. I love PS1 survival horror style games, and I particularly am a massive fan of old school pre-rendered style background games, even though this game is more or less in 3D, but it still uses the pre-rendered kind of like aesthetic to some degree, but it utilizes the fixed camera angles, which I love, because playing like games like Resident Evil, there was the likes of Dino Crisis as I mentioned, there was loads of other games that was on the PS1 that used a lot of similar styles, even like Alone in the Dark to name but a few. And this game definitely uses the similar style. The one thing to note with this game compared to the likes of even Resident Evil, it's more Dino Crisis inspired. But the main difference with this game from having played it is that it's not combat focused like you would be familiar with in those games. You don't actually have access to weapons. What you do need to do is look for resources and look for elements and items that can actually help you to progress throughout the levels. But not only that, when you do come in contact with the likes of enemies or the dinosaurs that you will encounter throughout the course of the game, your way of getting around them is to actually use stealth and to actually sneak around them. As you can see, the character actually has like a torch, and you do need the torch to illuminate the areas that you're actually in, because there's certain criteria that has to be met when you go to pick up items, unlock areas or doors, and you can't actually see what you're doing when there's no light, so that's where the torch comes in handy. But not only that, it also has a direct influence on your environment, because it does light up the environment, but it also, if you're trying to avoid the likes of the dinosaurs, you do have to turn the torch off because it alerts them to your presence. So it actually has a lot of really cool kind of like styles. It has your typical control style of the likes of these type of games where you can walk, you can run, but you can crouch as well. And when you crouch and you move a lot slower, but you move more silently. And this is actually one of the main emphasis and ideas behind the game, as it actually allows you to go and use the stealth mechanics pretty much so that you can sneak around enemies, and you will actually see it through the course of the demo. So the game pretty much has you kind of locked down in some sort of base within like the Antarctic or that kind of environment where it's all like in a blizzard and snow, and you're barricaded in. So your job is to try and get out of the environment or the research lab that you're actually in. The problem with it is that there's dinosaurs everywhere, and you're the only survivor because everyone else that was on the base has actually been killed by the dinosaurs. As you can see, you'll come across a lot of other members as you actually go through the demo. It's not to say that I want to give away too many spoilers. It's one of those things that you'll actually have to play for yourself. I'll actually drop a link down in the description. You can find the game over at itch.io. I highly recommend that you download it and play it. Like, the file size isn't overly large, and if you have access to a PC where you can play it and you have a good graphics card, you'll be able to play this very easily. And again, it works perfectly with the likes of if you've got even an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller hooked up to your PC, you'll have no problem playing this at all, and it will just bring you back to all those memories of all those old school games like I mentioned. One of the cool features that this game really does get right is its ambience and atmosphere, because again, it's very dark in tone, it's very dark lit, a lot of really dark environments. Like I mentioned, you have to use the torch in order to be able to illuminate specific areas. areas. You also have to kind of stay in the shadows as well, as you can see here on the screen, where you do actually have to stay out of sight of the dinosaurs, because if they hear you or they see you, they will run after you and attack you. A cool feature with this here is as well is when you get damaged, what it actually does is it affects the character in the way that it affects your limbs. The more damage you take, the more it affects the limbs of the character. So he'll be holding his arm if he gets slashed or bitten once, then you'll start hobbling around on his leg, and then if you get hit, then subsequently you actually struggle to move and you actually can't move to a point that when the next hit, then you're dead. But you can see the damage elements is reflected on the character, and his injuries are apparent on that. So it's really, really cool. If you played the game at all, you will actually see that. And as you can see, you have to use stealth and sneak around to be able to avoid enemies and avoid detection, but you do also need to be able to search like rooms and so forth to find like items. Like some rooms may have items that are of use, other rooms will probably have nothing, but it's worthwhile taking your time and enjoying searching through your surroundings, because you never know where you might find items that will actually help you to move forward. And this is just a reflection of all those old school games that I've actually, like I mentioned, because it captures all those vibes really, really well, where you do have to go from different rooms and you do need to pick up items so that you can unlock other items or unlock other areas further into the game. So it definitely is very, very reflective of a lot of those old school games that we've all played, and we all love playing them anyway. So if it's something that you actually think that you would actually enjoy, and if you want something that would bring back a lot of that nostalgia, this I do believe is something that is actually worth actually looking into. The game actually has been heavily praised by a lot of fans. Even over on the website you can actually see a lot of the comments, and a lot of people have actually made videos themselves of the game in action, giving their own opinions of it. And I think that this is something that actually will actually come to light. There are quite a number of these games and even like demos starting to appear over the last while, and again they're all heavily inspired by the PlayStation 1, and quite rightly so, because the PlayStation 1 was pretty much the birth ground for the likes of a lot of these survival horror genres and titles, and they pretty much set the standard for what was to actually come after it. But again, like myself, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there, you really like more so the old school nostalgic kind of games like this here game represents. They are always my favourite style of games, and they are actually worth playing. So the fact is that a lot of fans are out there and they're actually still making an effort to try and relive a lot of those classics, and to actually try and put their own spin on it and create something that's totally unique. Like, they're not reinventing the wheel, but they're taking something that already knows that works, and they're just adding their own take on it, and they're doing it really, really well, and even adding a bit more elements to it. Like with this here with dinosaurs, instead of actually using weapons, you're sneaking around, which I love stealth games as well. So for me, this is a perfect balance, because not only are you using stealth, but it's also survival horror based, which you couldn't ask for anything better, because for me it's among two of my favourite genres all mixed into one, which is fantastic. So if you're into a good mix of both stealth and even survival horror, which to be honest there's very few games like that around, this is definitely something that I think you really should look into. And I'd imagine before long that this game will get a full build at some point, and it probably will be released on the likes of Steam and so forth, maybe even released on consoles. We actually have seen a few of these type of games that started off as just initial ideas and have actually taken on a life of their own, and some of them actually have been released on Steam in recent months and over the last couple of years. So I can definitely see this game actually following the same trend, and I actually hope it does, because again, it's something different. The graphics itself are very reflective of the PlayStation 1, and it really suits and sets the tone. Plus the music and the ambience and just the atmosphere that the game generates is fantastic, and it's very, very reflective of those old school games. It is actually a scary game. From having played it and spent a bit of time with it, it is actually really, really cool. Even though it's a little short, it's definitely something worth looking into, and I highly recommend that you should check it out. If you're a fan of the PlayStation 1, and if you're a fan of old school survival horror games, or even Resident Evil or Dino Crisis type of games, this is something you have to play. Again, be sure to check out the link below. I'll drop down in the description to download the game on itch.io and go and download it and see for yourself what I'm actually talking about, because the game is actually getting a lot of praise, and I definitely think that it is definitely a cool way to play a new take on old school style games, and I definitely think that these are making a comeback, and it's definitely a great time to be part of the action, so I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't done so already. And I'd love to know what you think of this game. Is this something that you would actually play yourself? And if you're a fan of these type of games and nostalgia style survival horror game, let us know what you think by sharing it down in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more style videos like this, where I explore different types of old school PS1 inspired survival horror games, then make sure to leave a like on the video. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel, and again hit that bell icon to be updated whenever future videos are released. And also be sure to check out some of the videos here on the screen where I have actually explored some other similar games that are based around PS1 games that are clones that have been released on the likes of itch.io and other websites that are heavily inspired by survival horror games of the past, and so that you can check them out for yourself. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.